Hello everyone. It was last year this time I decided to go on ketogenic diet and give it a try. So it's been about a year. And many of you probably have seen my keto vegan recipes. I really thank you guys for your support. And many of you have asked me all sorts of questions in terms of how I get on with the diet, things I do or things I don't. Since it's going to be 1 year anniversary, I'm going to answer some of these questions and also share my thoughts and some tips with you. And there are also things that are kind of expected that we do on keto that I don't particularly do. And there are things I consider highly critical in terms of staying on keto healthy, particularly as a vegan. So today I would like to share them with you. So it's about a year since I've been on keto. A lot has happened. I've learned a lot from experts and also other people on keto. And many of their ideas have completely changed the way I look at food and look at how I manage my body. And in many ways, it has changed my life. So many of you probably have seen my keto vegan cooking videos, the recipes. So very often I'm asked, what are the macros, what are the calories of a particular recipe? And the answer is I don't really know. And the reason being that I don't count macros, I don't count calories, I'm lazy. So macro is basically nutritional values of a certain food or recipe. With counting macros and calories, there are online database that you could check, but most of the time is highly inaccurate. And also I'm a great believer of the less you need to do, the more likely you're gonna stick with something. I try to minimize things that are not critical for me and being smart about it so you don't overburden yourself with a lot of tasks that's not necessary. With something like keto, I find that if you focus on two things, one is the carb count, one is the fat count. Make sure the carb count is low and make sure the fat intake is high. And the rest kind of just take care of itself. And it has worked really well. So if your carb count is low, that means your body is not in the sugar roller coaster. And if your fat intake is sufficiently high, that means your appetite will be very stable. If you're suddenly suffering from sort of crazy hunger pain that feels like sugar crashes, the chances are you probably have consumed too much carbs without realizing it. So you need to look at what you've eaten in the past couple of days and review that and see if there are hidden carbs that perhaps you overlook. For the past year, I say my appetite has been very, very stable. I'm verging on having to encourage myself to eat more in case I'm not consuming enough calories, because that's one of the pitfalls. If you're not taking enough calories, in the longer term, your health could suffer. So I try to watch out for that. If you haven't listened to Dr. Fang's talk, by all means do so. He's a Canadian kidney doctor and he's been treating a lot of people on severe type 2 diabetics. Type 2 diabetics, historically, for mainstream doctors, they think they're not treatable. They just went with this disease that gradually get worse. And Dr. Fang has treated a lot of patients very successfully. A lot of them are cured from the disease. What I learned from Dr. Fang is that the food you're eating is not just in terms of calories coming in or out. You and me can eat completely same food but have totally different response in terms of how it reflects itself in weight and our well-beings. It's actually how our body responds to it hormonally. And that varies so much from person to person. So that's why some people can eat the same amount of food, gain weight, and the other person exactly the same body shape and lose weight. And we call it metabolism. To a certain extent, that's true. But what is metabolism? It's how your body responds to the food you're taking in. So with that in mind, counting calories becomes less meaningful because what is that? And with macros, as I said, I focus on the two big groups in terms of fat intake and carb counts. As long as I keep my eyes on these two things, the rest kind of work out by itself. And it makes my life so much easier. So I don't need to overthink, I don't need to get my calculators out, I don't need an app. But for some of you, it might be the opposite. Some of you might be more motivated using an app, some sort of tracker, and log everything you eat. If that's the case, by all means do so. But just bear in mind that that's kind of a reference for yourself, because as I said, most of the times those numbers are actually not very accurate. So the second thing I don't do is measuring my ketone level. And you might go, well, that doesn't sound right because it's all about being ketosis, isn't it? And it kind of is and isn't. And as one of the things I learned quite valuable in the past year is that I think if you've been in ketosis, you kind of know how it feels. So when you're entering the diet in an initial phase, probably the first 48 hours and the following few days, you probably notice that you will have that slight metallic taste in your mouth. And that's a sign that you're in ketosis. But when your body is in ketosis, you almost don't need test strip to tell you that. You kind of know because it feels very different. It feels stable, your sugar level is totally level, and you rarely feel hungry. Your body feels very different, and that is so loud and clear comparing to if you're eating carbs. You almost don't need a test strip to tell you that. So if you're on keto for the first time, yes, I think it's beneficial for you to use the test strip. And I think it's more psychological in the sense that you know your body is in ketosis. And the reason I don't do it is that, again, goes back to my lazy nature. It's a bit of a hassle. You have to buy the strips and you have to go through the testing process. So those of you who don't know what it is basically you put it through your urine. So you use it when you go pee. So for me, I don't really enjoy that process. And also it's a bit of a hassle. And also another important thing is that think about it. A ketone fundamentally is the source of energy just like glucose. That's what your body produces when your body is in ketosis. So imagine if you detect a high level of ketones in your urine. It basically means your body is wasting the ketones your body produces. So you're losing them out through urine. And that often happens when your body is not fully in fat adapted state. If you're fully fat adapted and your food intake is appropriate for your body and your activities that you carry out day to day, then in theory, you shouldn't detect a lot of ketones in your urine. So if I test myself now, it's highly possible that I only detect a very small amount of ketones. But it doesn't mean that I'm not in ketosis. So if you detect very low level of ketones, yes, it could be possible that you're not in ketosis. But also it could mean that your body is very efficient in using up the ketones that your body produces, so you lose out very little through your urine. So with that in mind, testing ketone levels become less meaningful for me. So I opted not to do that. But again, it's a bit like counting calories or macros. It really depends on what kind of person you are and what motivates you. So if you feel that testing ketone level on a daily basis gives you that motivation and reassurance that you're doing well, then of course do that. The third thing I don't do is meal prepping. So this is a foreign idea. I know bodybuilders do that. Bodybuilders, they eat like 6 times a day or something like that. But I'm not a bodybuilder, as you can see. And I only eat, most days I probably have 1 or 2 meals. So it doesn't really take up that much of my time. And to be honest, there are not many things I can think of that's worse than knowing exactly what you're going to eat for the rest of the day, let alone the rest of the week. I like to be spontaneous with my food. I like to surprise myself what I can come up. And that sounds a lot more attractive for me rather than having sort of 12 boxes of Tupperware in my fridge so I can sort of take them in like medicine. And another more serious point about meal prepping is that, I know some people, they prep for a week. The fact is, anything that you cook, as soon as you slice those tomatoes, they make contact with the oxygen, they will start to deteriorate. By the time you eat it, after a few hours later or days later, the nutritional values will be greatly lost. So imagine if you're eating something that's prepared 2 or 3 days ago or even longer, particularly in the case of vegetables and fresh ingredients. Essentially what you're eating is fiber and not much else. So if you do that for a long time, in a way you're not really taking in enough nutrition your body needs. And that could have implication on your health. So it is something to think about. So unless you're extremely busy and that's the only way you can stick with the diet, then that's not much you can do. But I think most of us can find some time to cook. And that's one of the things I kind of strive to do with this channel, is to share recipes with you that is really easy to cook, and also techniques that you could learn that you can apply to create other dishes. And so in a way you kind of just naturally be able to open the fridge and look at the ingredients you've got at any given time and be able to rustle up something really wholesome. Most of us can find time to chop a few vegetables and do a stir fry or something like that. So it's about organizing your life in a way so you don't become almost slave to your diet. Okay, and now here are the 3 things I definitely do being on keto. 3 things I think are critical in terms of keeping me on this diet happily and healthily. So the first thing I do is I weigh myself every day. I make sure I get up in the morning, the first thing I do, I brush my teeth, I get on that scale. So for me, it's not just about tracking numbers. It's about using those numbers on the scale as an indicator to help me understand how food affects my body. As I said before, food is not just calories coming in and going out. It triggers a lot of different hormonal responses. A lot of that reflects in fluctuation of our weight. So I pursued dance when I was a teenager. I took dance classes and I wanted to become a dancer. And in the dance environment, at least back in my days, it's almost normal to have some sort of eating disorder. I was quite lucky. I never went down the path of bulimia or anorexia. But for years, I was struggling with food in terms of I didn't know what to do with it. So my body will respond well. I can get my body to do what I wanted to do. It felt out of control. So for many years, I didn't want to go near a scale because it reminds me of my obsessive years with my weight and with my body image. And since I went on keto, being older and wiser, I started to use scale as my friend, as a way to assist me to identify things that I could change and modify. So I use a scale like a link up with my phone. So you hop on the scale, it will transfer the number to your app, and it creates a profile. So you can see the fluctuation and it gives you precise dates. And I find that extremely useful because not so much I'm obsessed with the number. I'm using it as an indicator to see how the food I've eaten the day before or a couple of days before affect my body. Normally, if it starts to go up, I know maybe there's carb intake that I wasn't aware of, or maybe I had a couple of drinks. I think alcohol has a tremendous effect on your weight as well. So for me, it's very reassuring. And also there's a sense of accountability. Again, it's not about obsessing with how much you weigh. So I don't have a strict number that I want to keep my body in necessarily. I do a lot of exercise, so it doesn't help me if I have excess body weight. It doesn't help me to jump. So it has become my friend and I do it every day. I think the few days I missed, I went on holiday, but I made sure I used a hotel scale. And the point like you choose to come on keto or any kind of diet changes, you want to be accountable with what you do so you don't go off track for too long. So even if you've gone off track, you really gone off track for a day and you can do something to bring it back on track. So I find that really useful. And the next thing I absolutely, definitely do is exercise. And I can't stress enough of the importance of exercise and what it does to my mind and my body. So as I said, I used to pursue dance, so a lot of emphasis with ballet, etc. It's about, creating beautiful lines, but exercise now for me is more about creating a functional body. So for me, it's no longer about performance. It's not about how fast I can run or how long I can hold the dancer's pose. It's more about how well I am and how happy I am be able to carry out day-to-day tasks. So it's about, can you happily go to a supermarket and carry a bunch of bags and not feel like your arms are going to break off your shoulders? Can you run and catch the bus without huffing and puffing? Stuff like that, functional things. And also flexibility is extremely important. Can you bend forward and touch the ground without screaming in pain? Flexibility is going to prevent you from getting injured. Your body is more responsive to whatever's happening in the environment. So I think many of you probably come on keto for weight management, and I'm one of them. But I think incorporating some sort of exercise is absolutely critical. It will make you happier. It will give you more motivation to stay on keto. And the exercise I highly recommend is yoga. Anybody can do yoga. Not everybody can go out and run a marathon, but anybody can do yoga. And it doesn't matter what shape or size or ability you have. You can find a version of yoga that you can do. Our body is designed to move. Our body is not designed to sit in the office for 8-9 hours or to sit in the car. If you work out, you feel better, the more likely you're going to make better choices with your food. It will make it so much easier to stick with the diet. And exercise is such a great way to alleviate stress. And I try to challenge my body doing different things. So I do a lot of yoga and Pilates, but I also try to throw in cardio, like Zumba classes, which is a lot of fun. And also I go to dance classes whenever I can. So it's about incorporating, and it becomes a habit. There'll be days that you're less motivated, but if you get your body used to a level of workout that your body requires, your body will urge you to do it. Even your brain says no, your body will go, I need this, give it to me. So it's about throwing different challenges to your body, and in a way it makes you mentally stronger as well, because you're used to being in a slightly uncomfortable state and know how to deal with it mentally. That's a great thing about physical exercise. It doesn't only make your body stronger, it makes your mind stronger. And something like yoga, you really only need a space for a mat. And that's all you do. You don't need a home gym, or if you don't have access to a good gym or yoga classes, you can use an app. And also if I'm traveling, I use this app called Yoga Glow, which I highly recommend. They have tons of classes there, different levels, different lengths, and they have really good teachers on that. So if I'm on the road and have no access to the gym or yoga classes, I use this app, because a lot of people give up exercise when they go on holiday. The diet is out of window, they don't exercise. So in a way, you want to create the kind of infrastructure around you that you have no excuse not to exercise, and you're halfway there. Another thing I think is really important being on keto or being a vegan is supplements. So I've taken supplements in the past on and off, but never consistently. I always thought if my diet was kind of balanced, I don't need to worry about supplements. But it doesn't matter why you became vegan or why you're on keto. It's the fact that we're eliminating a huge group of foods out of our diet. With a lot of vitamins we can naturally get with plant foods, that's not a problem, with nuts and seeds, etc. But as a vegan, you definitely want to watch out for vitamin D and B12, because these two vitamins, they're mostly derived from animal products. So what happened to me was earlier this year, after I came back from Japan and Taiwan, it was sort of mid-February. So I started to go through kind of 2-3 week period. I felt very tired. Not tired as in I exercised too much tired. I felt this fatigue from within that I kind of never felt before. And also I was feeling cold all the time, and I have this brain fogginess that just wouldn't leave me alone. So I thought, well, that's not normal. So almost for the first time in years, I went to my GP and asked for a blood test. I've been very lucky that I rarely get sick, and I rarely see my GP. I hardly knew who my GP was. You know, like a lot of people, I generally don't like the idea of going to the hospital. But it got to the point I thought, well, I have to pay attention to this. My body is doing something weird. The symptoms I was going through were so unusual and severe that I felt I had to pay attention. Whether it is to do with keto or not, I don't know. I went to my GP and get the blood work done. Well, everything was in flying color, including B12. So I go, well, that's fantastic. But then when vitamin D report came out, it was pretty shocking. My level was way low. I think the normal range is between 70 to 200, and mine was barely 20. So that explained the fatigue and brain fogginess and constantly feeling cold. So they put me on a really high dosage of vitamin D, because my vitamin D was so low that it required really high dosage to bring back up. And also with vitamin D, it's important to get enough sunlight. I know we all worry about skin cancer and stuff like that, so we put a lot of sunblock. But without sufficient sunlight, you could have all sorts of problems, as I know because I live in London and we get probably a month of proper sunlight, if at all, and it probably has impact on my vitamin D level as well. So now we're barely come out of winter and there's more sunlight, so I try to expose myself under sunlight as much as possible. You know, it's very hard to get sunburned in London. And now it's been about 6 weeks I'm on those tablets and I feel great. It makes such a difference. If I didn't have my blood work done, I'll probably trying to take all sorts of supplements and see if anything worked. It was kind of what I did for a little while. Low vitamin D is kind of a vegan thing, but I think definitely to do with being on keto as well, because I've been vegan for many years, never really had problem. So it's something we really need to be honest about, because very often when we go on a diet, we have the tendency of trying to defend it. I still have people around me going there, you know, you have to be careful with this diet because it might have long-term effect that's negative. And for that, my answer is they could be right. I don't know, because there's no long-term study on ketogenic diet, let alone ketogenic vegan. So in a way I like to think we're pioneers, but also guinea pigs. We put ourselves through a diet that, you know, really hasn't been done before. So we want to perceive we care. So it's not in our interest just defend it and go, well, everything's going to be great on this diet because we're on it and we want people to think we're right. I think we can all fall for that. But it's about really being tuned in terms of how your body feels day to day. And if you start to have symptoms that you can't explain, you just don't feel right, then you need to look into what it is. And I highly recommend you do a blood test. You only take a few minutes to do, it doesn't hurt at all, and then it gives you the profile of where you are right now. And there's another thing you want to watch out on keto, is a lot of people have deficiency of magnesium. I find it's not so much a problem for vegans because magnesiums you get from vegetables, plant foods, and a lot of nuts. Being on keto vegan, we probably consume these foods more than average person. So I think most of us probably will be fine. But if you get cramps or stuff like that, you probably want to look into your magnesium intake. Again, a blood test can give you a lot of information on where you are and whether you're deficient in any way. So I highly recommend that. So there you go. So these are the things I want to share with you. Again, for me, being on keto is a work in progress. I take it one day at a time. I'm not attached to it. And I think it's important not to turn it into a kind of a belief. As I said, we don't know what the long-term effects are. Listen to your body. And if it says yes, stay on it. But if it doesn't, then you need to pay attention. Maybe do a modified version, maybe only reducing refined carbs and sugar, but still have complex carbs. Only your body can give you that information. So these are things I wanted to share with you, and I hope they're somehow useful. And I think it's so important that we share information with each other. As I said, we are in slightly unknown territory. The more we can exchange information, the more likely people don't have to go through mistakes that we go through. So follow me on Instagram if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.